Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, personal development coach, HeartMath practitioner, dog photographer, and entrepreneur. In this podcast, I share tools, strategies, and amazing guest interviews to help you improve your mindset and your well-being with a sprinkle of fun and probably some mention of dogs along the way. So without further ado, let's squeeze the day. Hi folks, welcome to episode 10 of the podcast. Today I'm joined by my special guest, Sarah Parise, and we'll be talking about essential self-care practices. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Sarah. So driven by her passion to help other mums take better care of themselves, she's created a business called Great Days by Sarah, centered around self-care and prioritizing themselves for just 2% of the day. She takes pride in helping her clients transform their lives. And as a coach, she spends time understanding the root cause of the issue, sets milestones throughout the process, and celebrates when goals and dream scenarios are achieved. Sarah has been recognized by mums of all ages and stages of motherhood around the world for her extraordinary commitment to enable them to feel their best so they can give their best to their families each day. Bottom line, she helps mums have more great days. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thanks for having me.
We're going to be talking today about self-care and specifically self-care for busy mums, which can be a really, really difficult thing for them to achieve. And I think we often think that self-care is about massages, shopping trips with somebody else's unlimited Amex. There's my self-care dream right there, or lying in the bath for hours. But I think it's safe to say that none of these things are realistic for most regular people, and especially busy mums. So I'm curious to know what your definition of self-care is.
So the one I tell people is like anything you do to take care of yourself to stay physically, mentally, and emotionally well. But really just even to a simpler level is like anything that puts a smile on your face. So like you said, like a shopping spree with someone else's Amex, you're like a day at the spa. Like I think a lot of us think we need to dump a lot of time and money into self-care.
Yep.
But really, it can be really simple things. Like on Friday morning, I'll give you an example. I love hot chocolate. It's my favorite thing all year round. My mom used to make me hot chocolate before school growing up, and it's just like such a core memory to me.
Yeah.
So on Fridays, I add whipped cream, and my clients are like, gasp. I love whipped cream. It's such a simple pleasure,
yes.
But it's my version of Friday morning self-care. So it doesn't have to be extravagant for it to be effective.
Yeah. And I think why, in your view, especially for busy mums, is self-care so very, very vital and important?
It's so important for so many reasons, but I think the biggest complaint I get from moms is energy. And I just don't have the energy. And until you start doing it and kind of taking care of yourself and realize, oh, if I take care of myself, I will have more energy. A lot of people look at it as like, oh, it's one more thing. It's going to be an energy drain, when really it's the opposite. It improves so many things. It's a great way to manage stress this time of year, like boost immunity, like get your body working like it should be working, just better self-esteem. The list goes on and on, like the benefits of self-care. It's kind of a wonder when you say out loud all the benefits, why people don't do it more. It is really just taking care of the most important machine we have, our body.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can remember when my little one was very small. And you often told, especially with tiny, tiny babies, you have to breastfeed the baby. If you don't, it's a disaster. And I think a lot of people can feel very guilty about that. And the one thing I remember is actually, if you are doing something you don't want to be doing because you feel you have to, that's you're not in a good space to care for your child. And I think that it applies with self-care, is that if you are not taking care of you, your mind, your body, your well-being, which we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about, you can't care for everybody else. Because if you're frazzled, you've not got the patience to deal with small people who, are frazzling at best. Even if you've been on that shopping spree.
100%. And that mom guilt doesn't end with breastfeeding, which is like a big pressure from the get-go, but it's everything. You know, you think about, you know, one of the biggest reasons I think moms especially don't take care of themselves is because it's looked at as selfish, or we feel that it's selfish. And it's actually the opposite. I think it's kind of selfish not to take care of yourself, because your littles are not getting the best version of you.
No.
But that mom guilt is real. That is we all feel it. And I'm sure your kiddo is older now than mine. I'm sure there's always that twinge, but it's not to make, the goal isn't to make it disappear. It's to do it anyways and reap the benefits of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I was working with a coaching client recently who's got a little one who is, I think she's 2 or 3. And she quite literally said to me, I feel like self-care is completely indulgent. It's frivolous. I think there was almost the feeling that it should be hard to be parenting. It's almost like it should be a punishment. If I'm not finding this really difficult, am I even parenting? And I mean, it's, you know, as an observer, it kind of looks like madness, but when you're in the middle of that, it's really interesting. So how do you go about coaching your mum clients to get out of that self-care is selfish mindset?
Well, one, we kind of talk about the root cause a lot of where this pressure comes from. Like obviously society is like a huge thing, but that's too broad. I ask people often, like, what did your mom do? Like when you were younger? Did your mom exercise? Did she take care of her physical health? Did she do yoga? Did she do anything mentally or emotionally? Did she get together with friends? Like all of these things. Most moms, I'd say 95% of the people that I've worked with, no. I mean, we just weren't raised. The culture was so different. And it was more of you have to sacrifice. If you have kids, this is what it's all about. This idea of self-care, I feel like, is very new and very like in the mainstream now, and kind of one of those hot topics that we're talking about, especially with moms. But that wasn't always the case. Like when I started my business and I asked my mom, like, what did you do growing up for self-care? She laughed so hard. She laughed. She was like, what are you talking about? Like, and she is guilty of still not taking care of herself. Like now, you know, now she's taking care of my dad, who's a perfectly capable person of taking care of himself, but she's still doing it. So I think it's like, if you don't see it, you don't do it. Like if you're not shown a model of something, it's hard to be like, oh, this is what the acceptable thing is to do. And then of course, like social media, you're like, have all of these picture perfect moms out there, like doing all these elaborate crafts and baking these elaborate things and doing these. Of course, those are the highlight reels of people's lives. But I think we have to address like why we feel like this in order to kind of get out of it.
Yeah.
But I really do challenge. The first thing I do is to challenge people to just do one thing. Just start. A big part of the premise of the transformation that I lead moms through is to just do one thing. It doesn't need to be alone. It doesn't need to be like someone else has your children. Like it can be something that brings you joy that you haven't done in a long time. And even if it's 10 minutes, my daughter and I did a puzzle the other day, and I really love doing puzzles. I think COVID kind of wrecked that for me. I think I got out of liking doing puzzles.
Too many puzzles.
I took a big pause from puzzles, but I really do. I mean, the benefits, I just did a social media post, all the physical and health benefits of doing a puzzle. And her and I just did puzzles all afternoon before my other one got home from school. And I didn't like, that's self-care. That was just like, I was just in the moment with her. My phone was off in the other room. Just do something for yourself. And like, that doesn't feel selfish. I'm with my daughter. It doesn't have to be alone or at a spa or like out, you know, with a bunch of girlfriends. Obviously those things are amazing too.
Yes.
But to start small. And if you can't get away from your kids, which a lot of us can't, especially single moms, it's you can with the time.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by the puzzles. Did you let your daughter do any puzzling? Because I think if it was me now with a small human, I'd be like, just sit quietly. You can watch mummy do the puzzle because mummy will do it far faster.
You know, it's funny because my mom got us during COVID these Think 2 puzzles. So they're large puzzles, but they're broken up into letters. Like they have sections. Yeah. And it makes it doable. My daughter just turned 5 and loves puzzles. Yeah. But yeah, it's kind of tempting to be like, oh, that one, maybe try this one there.
And this is why I only have one child who is now left home. what we're sharing in the podcast today, or what I'm asking you to share, are what are the 3 areas of life that we can practice self-care, and like the 3 essential areas of life in your opinion. Where are they? What are they? And what would be some self-care practices that you might bring into those areas of your life?
One of my favorite topics. There's a lot of different kind of views on self-care, and there's like some people believe 7 pillars of self-care, but I really think it's even simpler than that. There's physical, there's mental, and there's emotional. And it kind of runs the gamut of what people think physical, and they're like, I got to get to the gym, or I got to go do a class, or I got to do something intense, or just really kind of got to sweat. And that's not the case at all. I think moving your body every day intentionally, like going out for a 10-minute walk, or your yoga practice, or doing a short workout video, is taking care of your physical health.
Yes.
It's also kind of dropped to the wayside of you're taking care of your physical health when you're eating well too. So I say every healthy choice counts. So if you make one healthy choice today, celebrate it. You made that healthy choice. If you had a handful of trail mix versus a Snickers, congratulations.
Congratulations.
So we take the physical part, it's movement, and it's also the nutrition. But I think the first step is to just move. Pick 10 minutes every day to move in a way you don't normally do. I work with a lot of moms that work outside the home, and they're on conference calls all day, or they're on Zoom calls. And I say, what is one call you don't have to be on Zoom for that you can get out and walk instead?
Yes.
You can be on your headphones. You can be present on the call.
Yes.
Better yet, if you're not a huge contributor for the call, but even if you have to be, to get out and move your body in that way, and just kind of switching your mentality of, I need to be sitting at work all day. How can we change that? Can you have a meeting that's a walk and talk instead? My husband does that all the time with people. He'd be like, let's walk and get lunch and walk back to the office. And it's like those little changes, and then it becomes a snowball effect, and you start changing other areas of your life also.
The one thing I've really enjoyed is I use Allo Moves on my phone to do yoga most days. I wouldn't, and I don't have small children, but I wouldn't get out of the house to go and do a yoga class. I don't have the time to do it. And it's great. I can do 15 minutes. I can do half an hour. That's probably about my limit. And it's right there. So there actually really isn't an excuse to not do it. It's super affordable, and I can just do it in the bedroom at home. And I've incorporated it into part of my morning routine. And I think it's the piece I get from what you're saying. And I think the thing I found with my own self-care practice is you've got to make it as easy as possible. So it isn't yet another thing on your to-do list that makes you feel horribly overwhelmed.
For sure. And there's thousands of apps. A lot of them, people say they don't have the money for it. There's tons of free apps that give you just as great a workout as if you go and you're spending $250 at the gym a month. It's not, that is no longer a reason, especially after being home during the pandemic. And there's so many things that you can do in your own space. And I love what you said, like setting it up. The earlier that you can do it in the day, the better off you'll be too. Because as the day goes on, there's a lot of other things, obviously, especially as moms, that pile up. That workout gets pushed by the wayside. So I always encourage people, I'm like, I know it's hard to be a morning person, but the chances of you getting it in, if you do it first, then everything else falls into place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the next thing you talked about, and I think this comes back to what I was saying in the beginning with the breastfeeding piece, is if you are doing something you don't want to be doing, it's kind of has it takes a big toll on your emotional well-being. I just remember thinking, if I'm happy, the baby's happy. So when it comes to emotional self-care, which I think can be really hard for people with small humans running around, what's your favorite piece that you recommend, your favorite practice you recommend for emotional self-care?
Well, one, I think the physical is like a trickle down effect.
Yes.
For me, it's the physical is great, but the bonuses outside of it trickle down into that emotional and the mental well-being, because I feel myself stronger emotionally if I move my body. But one of the biggest components to strictly kind of zone in on that emotional wellness is to get connected to a mom group or a networking group or a group of friends. It's lonely being a mom sometimes. times. And it's a lot of the moms I work with are entrepreneurs also, and they're solo entrepreneurs. So it's like you're working alone, you're momming alone, and it's like this isolation that a lot of times you don't even realize it before it's too late, before you're like, oh, wow, where'd everybody go? And I know that was one of my biggest struggles when I became a mom. Like, even though I was like around people that had kids, I didn't have that like connection right away until I went right back to the hospital where I gave birth, and they had a new mom group, and I joined that. And it was so helpful to be around people that are in your very same situation, who are going through the sleep regressions, who are going through the teething, who are going through the potty training. And now, especially with the online space, you can find that everywhere. I have a group on Facebook called Time Out for Moms, and it's just that. It's a timeout for moms. We do all things having to do with health and wellness for moms, but I think it's even better to get connected in your local community. Find something in person, go to a Mommy and Me yoga class, or take a class and not even bring your kid, take something that you have a passion for and sign up for something to meet people with similar interests. Because I think it's undervalued in our society, like having hobbies and having interests, and how much that does fuel your emotional health. So really my biggest thing is to get connected. And if all else, reach out to a friend and keep that relationship going, because we, fall by the wayside. So many, like I had a baby and I'm like, oh, wow, I haven't talked to people in like a couple years. I got to really reconnect. This is crazy. You like just get lost in your own little world. It does get lonely. And I think that connection, and whether they're your best friends or I always like to say, people come into your life for a season, a reason, or a lifetime.
Yes.
It's just that reason, like that you need to be connecting with moms, and it's just the season of life that you might be in at the moment.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, because a lot of people, I think it depends on your time of life where you have children. I think because a lot of people are having kids later and later on, maybe in your original friend circle, you're the only one who you're kind of having children later on. And I think as a non-small child possessing person, you end up not having a lot in common with either, if you're a person without children, it's, you sort of end up not relating to people with children, and vice versa. And I know when I had Rosie, we made friends with another couple who were in the antenatal class. And then we were kind of great friends for quite a while. And it was really nice because the babies were exactly the same age. We had slightly different parenting styles, but that's okay. And it was great because we'd get together every so often, because both of us were sort of at home. And it's very, I can remember it being very isolating if you don't have that connection. And then of course we also went to like a kids gymnastic thing, and I got told off for talking to the other mums too much. And I thought, why do you think I'm here? The kid is like falling off the stuff here. I'm here for the socializing. Just please watch my child. That's what you're supposed to be doing, and let me talk.
And you know what? That's such a good point too, because I think a lot of people that have like itty bitties, and they're like, "Am I really going to sign up for this music class?" Like they're 6 months old. 6 months old.
Is there going to be wine at the music class? Because I might
all
need
these questions we should be asking. But I encourage moms all the time. Yes, absolutely. Who cares if they get anything out of a music class when they're 6 months old? Like you need it just as much, probably more. Your little ones do. So I love that example at gymnastics. Like you get in trouble for talking so much. You're like, that's the reason I signed them up for gymnastics.
Absolutely. Does this look like it's going to be a champion gymnast? No, I don't think so.
I love that.
The last piece you talked about with self-care was mental practice. Now, for me, that would be something like meditation. I don't know how viable is it to meditate with small children? Do you have anybody who sits and meditates with their children? Because I can imagine that would be the most brilliant thing you could actually train small people to do as early as possible.
As early as possible. So there actually is. I love the Headspace app for meditation. Yep. And they have an amazing Sesame Street partnership series, and they have meditations for kids. My girls, they're 5 and 7 now, but for the last 2 years, they are obsessed. There's one on patience. There's one on things not going your way. There's one on someone else interrupting your space and time, knocking over a tower that they built. It's unbelievable. And it is just a short, like 2-minute clip, but there's always breath involved, like some breath control.
Yep.
And it gets them thinking of like patience, Cookie Monster's waiting for his cookies to bake. And he's frustrated. He wants his cookies and he wants them now. So Andy, the head of Headspace, comes on and says, well, let's notice, like, what do we hear around us? Oh, you hear the birds outside. Oh, you hear the clock ticking. And they go through the 5 senses, and then they can smell the cookies is the last one that they kind of go through. And it is teaching children mindfulness. It's all about like being in the moment, kind of bringing them to that attention. And meditation is amazing. But that's the piece of the program that I run that I get the most pushback on.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I think people think of like a monk sitting in a cave, hands on his legs, like you need silence, you need darkness, you need to have your clear thoughts. And what mom has like a clear mind? I mean, no one, never met one. And so I think that's what people think of with meditation.
Yeah.
In that Temple for Moms group that I was talking about earlier, I do a Monday meditation, and it's short. It usually involves some kind of movement, and it doesn't matter if there's little naked children running around you or you're folding laundry. It's like stuff that you can multitask with. And it's more about like being mindful.
Yes.
But I think when I say to people, you don't have to meditate, but take a brain break.
Yes.
I took this from my daughter's preschool and I loved it. When they get busy and they're doing a million things, and then the teacher starts to notice that the wheels start to fall off, they take a brain break.
Okay.
And I love that because it can be just 5 minutes. So not that I encourage people to pick up their phones. I usually say the opposite. Yeah. But pick up your phone and do like a words with friends or a crossword puzzle or just something to distract you from what you're doing.
Yes.
And I find joy in that. Like any of those like little silly games, a Candy Crush, a Wordle, like anything to just take a break. And it stops that ongoing running train in your head of productivity that you need to be getting something done.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's hard. And I think it's especially difficult with little ones, because how productive can you be with smalls running around? As soon as you tidy something, it's been drawn on or thrown out again. And I think it's a lot of this comes back to, we have to be gentle with ourselves. I think especially when you're parenting children, it's hard, and it's okay that you find it hard. To come back to your point about social media, we're shown perfect people on there, and you don't see the meltdowns because nobody shares them, thankfully, because I don't think we need to see that either particularly, but it would add a bit of a dose of reality to it. Because everybody's held up to this crazy high standard of, your house must be tidy all the time. And like you said, you must be smiling and baking cookies all the time. What if you don't want to? I mean, what if you can't? I mean, it's just, what if you get out of bed and get the children dressed and manage to not strangle them by the end of the day? That might be a success.
And you know what? I have a neighbor who calls that being just an okay mom.
Yeah.
And she's very verbal about it. Like she came over to watch football a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And the kids were playing in the backyard and they needed like everything because, the sensors went off. We sat on the couch and the sensors went off, and knowing that they needed everything in that moment. And she said, me and Miss Sarah, we're just being okay moms today. We're not rock stars. We're usually rock star moms. Today, we're going to be okay moms. And I love that term.
Yeah.
And just the idea of allowing yourself some grace. I remind myself that often. We hold ourselves to an unrealistic standard.
Yes.
And just allowing yourself some grace when it doesn't go perfect. Because hopefully your children know what a rock star mom you are, and they know you love them, and they care, regardless of how they act sometimes. It's okay. Just be an okay mom some days.
Yes.
That's all right.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think that is something, it's just about letting yourself off the hook, because I think we often create a lot of our own unhappiness with the way we think, and we think we should be doing this and we should be doing that. And I think as soon as you add a should or a have to or a need to, it's kind of almost a moment to go, hang on a minute. Because that sort of languaging is very unhelpful, I think, for thought patterns and for where those thought patterns take you in terms of how you end up feeling.
Definitely. And just that idea of allowing yourself off the hook is a version of self-care.
Just
back and I'm going to take care of myself for a minute. And it's okay. Just the fact that you're thinking that you need to be better and do more. You're an amazing mom. Like, you're amazing mom. To even have those standards is amazing.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job.
Yeah.
And I think we have to remind ourselves that, because there's no awards at the end of the year, as far as I know, of all these
there isn't a mum's Oscars. No, there's not. Although if there was, the person presenting the award should be Snoop Dogg, because I don't know if you've seen, he has recorded a set of affirmations for children.
I saw him live in concert a few weeks back.
Did he perform those affirmations though?
Did not, but it was talked about in the mom crew that I went with of how he has shifted his brand since becoming a father.
I mean, I don't know if he's the sort of person you necessarily would want your children to be associating with, but I stumbled across them on a soundtrack on a reel on Instagram, and I'm thinking, hold the phone, what is this? And I thought, this is brilliant. So anybody listening, if you haven't heard Snoop Dogg's children's positive affirmations, please go and find them, because they also work for adults as well.
Absolutely. Find the affirmations. Don't take your children to a concert.
No, he won't perform them at the concert. Sarah, this has been brilliant. I've loved chatting with you today. I believe you have a free self-care guide for mums, and I guess for anybody actually who might be interested in this as well, even if they're not a mum. Even I've got lots of people who are dog mums, and I think sometimes that can be stressful. I've got 5 dogs, and at least I can shut them out in the garden if I've had enough of them for a while, or I can go out and I could leave them unattended at home.
That seems to be frowned upon with children.
Don't follow me for more parenting tips. Okay. Sarah, where can we find your free guide?
On my website. It's greatdaysbysarah.com. And the guide is how busy moms prioritize their wellness. And it's just a super fun, like bingo style game that give you ideas to work in fitness throughout the course of the day.
Brilliant. I will pop the link to that in the show notes so everybody can find that, and then the link to your website. And thank you very much for joining me today. This has been really great. And thank you for sharing your expertise, and I think reframing and making self-care far more accessible, and just getting rid of that stigma that somehow self-care is selfish. It's not, folks. It's important. So thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah, for that.
Thank you, Emma. This is lovely.
Thanks for listening, folks. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please share with your friends, and be sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. To find out more about my one-on-one coaching, please visit my website, which is emmaobriencoach.com. And remember, folks, when life gives you lemons, you can always choose another fruit. See you next time.